Sounds good. Sounds good. Good morning, everybody. We are today, Monday, is Daf Samach. We are at the Mishnah on Nun Tes Amud Beis, a whole bunch of lines up. Hamagdish B'soch Sada Chavero. So there's two different Mishnahs. We're on the upper Mishnah first one. So Magdish B'soch Sada Chavero. So a person Shelo B'Rishus. So a person he piles up his grain in someone else's field without first getting rishus. The achlasan behemto shel bal hasadeh pater. So now the bal hasadeh, his animal is there. His animal starts munching on your grain. Again, you came without rishus, right? So the halacha is you came without rishus. The bal hasadeh, the pater, if his animal starts eating your grain. So we are in the middle of the Mishnah on Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis, the first of the two Mishnahs. Bim huzka behen bal hagadish chayav. Now, if the bal hasadeh's animal gets hurt by your grain, that again you put shelo b'rishus, the bal hagadish is going to be chayav. So again, a guy's got grain, and he walks into someone else's field. He puts his grain there without rishus. If the bal hasadeh's animal starts eating my grain, that guy's pater. I had no rishus to put my stuff in his field. Not only that, if his animal gets hurt by my grain, I'm chayav. Now, if I had rishus to put my stuff there, then bal hasadeh is chayav. Then the bal hasadeh is chayav if his animal eats my stuff. Now, if this all sounds familiar, it's because on Mem Zayin Amud Beis, I believe, we had a pretty lengthy Mishnah that had like 3 or 4 examples of this exact thing. And I think the unfortunate kind of struggle with why this Mishnah is here. I thought we kind of did this already. But the bottom line is, in that Mishnah, in the longer Mishnah, the Mishnah ended with a line, and it said that Rebbe is kind of holik on this last line of the Mishnah. The last line of the Mishnah said that as long as I had rishus to put my stuff there, the Baal Hasadeh is chayiv if anything happens to my stuff. Rebbe argued, and Rebbe said, no, just because he gave me rishus to put my stuff in his field doesn't mean he's necessarily guarding my stuff. It just means I have rishus to put it there. He's not going to be chayiv unless he specifically gives me assurance that he's watching over my stuff. If he tells me I agree to watch over your stuff, fine. But if not, not. So the Gemara says, Lema Tanan de Lo Karebi. Sounds like our Mishnah is not going like Rabbi. Di Karebi, Ha'omer Achi Kabal of Balabayas Lishmar. He shouldn't be chayiv until he literally tells me that he is going to accept the responsibility to guard my my produce. Amar Papa, Benitari, Beidari, Askinon, Decayman de Amrle, Ayel Vegadosh, Ayel Va'anterlach. Who? This is a little bit different. The way Rashi explains, I guess this is like all of the folks that lived in this place, in this particular bikah, they all kind of group together in some sort of co-op, and they hire this watchman to watch all the grain. So this guy, he's like the building security guard, right? He's the doorman. Exactly. So if they tell you like, yeah, you can leave your stuff here, then that guy is implicitly agreeing to like watch your stuff. He's the doorman, or whatever it is, security guard. So that's different, and therefore don't necessarily say that this is a Stam Mishnah, not like Rebbe. Okay. So a guy's got a flame, and he gives it to Bechar Shot of a Katan, and then all these damages ensues. So this is something that we've seen a number of times. This is the Machlokas, ultimately Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan, how we understand the line. Isha mishum chitzo, Isha mishum mamono. But here's the Mishnah. So again, if I have a flame and I give it to a Cher Shot of a Katan, I'm pater b'dinei adam v'chayav b'dinei shmayim. Shalach biyad pikeach. Let's say I give it to a pikeach chayav. I gave it to someone who's responsible. That person will be, is going to be chayav if something happens. Echad hevi es ha'ar ve'echad hevi es ha'eitzim. Let's say one person comes with the fire, another person comes with the eitzim. Now the fire on its own would not have caused any damage, but the second guy brings the eitzim that causes the fire to spread. Maybe it's the eitzim chayav. The second guy is going to be responsible. He brought the eitzim. Echad hevi es ha'eitzim ve'echad hevi es ha'ar. So just the reverse of the case. First guy has the eitzim without the fire wasn't going to do anything. The next guy brings the fire. It's the second guy. Maybe it's the ar chayav. But acher v'liba. Let's say you've got a third guy. So one guy brings fire. Wasn't going to do anything on its own. One guy brings the eitzim. wasn't going to do much on its own. Third guy comes, starts fanning the flames. Now, all of a sudden, so the Mishnah says, Hamalave Chayiv. The third guy is the one that's responsible. Livsa Haruach Kulam Patur. Let's say you got this fire up, the wind comes, and whatever happens, and also now there's damage, everyone's patur. And again, the Gemara is going to explain. So, Mark, we just finished the second Mishnah on Daf Nun Tes Amud Beis. We're about to start the Gemara 3 lines from the bottom. So we said this first line of the Mishnah, the Mishnah says, this line was subject to a dispute for Yochanan and Reish Lakish that we've kind of seen throughout the Masechta. I guess not.
So it seems like, I guess, oftentimes in parking have totally new, in Arabic soccer, totally different.
Yeah.
But this one, obviously, they're continuing the same thought throughout the whole soccer so far. So how the only thing that parking was just to make it more doable, people get overwhelmed. Oh, the Paris is 70 block, so
yeah.
There's really no difference.
And especially Bava Kama, it seems like they're constantly pulling from Shais and Gemara back and forth. Yeah. Either way. So Amr Reish Lakish, Mishmei de Chizkiah, Lo Shanu, El Shmach Lo Gacheles, the Liba. So this, you're only going to be patur b'dinei Adam, Achai b'dinei Shemaim, if you gave over to the Chereshot V'Katan a coal, and then I guess, so on its own, in theory, it should have just done nothing, but then, something must have happened. But if you really give a flame, a real fire over to a Chereshot V'Katan, Chayiv b'dinei Adam even, my time, my stuff to Garmulo, because this is Rish Lakish Shita, that Isha is Mishuma Mono, and the same way, if I give a shar to a Chereshot V'Katan, he's not responsible to watch my shar. So therefore, if something happens, obviously I'm responsible. I was negligent by giving over my shar to a Chereshot V'Katan. No different if I give a flaming fire. Now, if I give a coal, maybe it's a different story. If Yochanan Amar Afilu Maslo shall have his patur. Yochanan says, I don't think so. I think even if you gave a flame to a Chereshot V'Katan, you're going to be patur midinei Adam. Why? My time at Tzapsa the Cheresh Garmalo, because he held Isho Mishum Chitza, which is more like a kocho Adam Amazik, and therefore it's the actions of the Chereshot V'Katan. Clearly, I'm negligent, I'm responsible, and therefore I'm chayiv b'dinei Shemayim, but at least I'm going to be patur midinei Adam. And Rav Yochanan continues, Lo mechayiv ad sheyimser lo gavsa, salta, and shraga, dahi vade ma'aseh d'dei garma. So you can use your imagination, but if you literally give the Chereshot V'Katan, Rashi says gavsa is coats and thorns, salta is eitz and dakim, right? And then, so basically, if you give him the whole, arts and starter kit, then you are going to be chayiv. Okay. The next line of the Mishnah was, so we are right at the top of Samach Amud Aleph, second line. Shalach viad pikeach hapikeach chai. And really, what the Gemara is going to be going on is there was a series of cases in the Mishnah, but the last of the cases of the Mishnah that this line of the Gemara is going to be going on. This line of the thing is going to be going on is the Mishnah said, what if you have, one guy brought the flame and one guy brought the wood and then one guy was lubsa, right? One guy was valiba. One guy fanned it. And the girsa of our Mishnah is valiba. Well, apparently there's another girsa somewhere and it says viniba with a nun, not with a lama. That's really what the Gemara is going to be going on. So Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, mandatani liba lo mishtamish, mandatani niba lo mishtamish. Both girsas, are not mishtabish. They both kind of have a source to it. Mandatani liba lo mishtamish. The one who says libas and fanning the flame is not mishtabish. We have a pasuk labas eish, right? If this sounds familiar, it's in this week's parsha. It has to do with the snack, right? So the pasuk says about Yera Malach Hashem Elav labas eish. So therefore, labas refers to a flame. Umanatani niva lo mishtamich dichsev bore niv sebasayim. So that pasuk I don't think has anything to do with fire. I think it has to do with lips and blowing, but fanning a flame. Therefore, again, whether the girsa of your Mishnah was liba or niba, we can make both of them work. Okay, love saharuach kulam patur. And then the Mishnah said that if you have three people, so one guy's fanning flames and one guy's got the wood and one guy's got the fire, but the wind comes and the wind kind of moves the fire, everyone's going to be punished. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a brisa, liba, v'lav saharuach. Let's say one person fanned the flame, but then the wind comes. Im yesh b'libuya kedei lulabosa chayiv. If the person's fanning was enough to cause the fire to spread, he's going to be chayav. But being lav pater. But if the person's fanning of the flame wasn't sufficient, it's really the wind that really caused the fire to move, then everyone's going to be pater. And the Gemara says, Amai, why is that? If I worked with the wind, but it was really the wind that moved it, but again, I had something to do with it, why am I pater? Lahavi kazora, ruach mesiato. Why isn't it like a case of Zora on Shabbos? So again, what is winnowing on Shabbos? What is this malacha of Zora? Something that we're not very familiar with. But again, Zorea. What is this case of Zorea? So if you, I guess, have a pile of stuff and you use your pitchfork and you throw it up and then the wind moves the chaff or whatever, right? So that is the malacha of Zorea. You do this on Shabbos, you're going to be chai. Now again, that is very much us, the person, using the wind to do whatever he needs to do. So how come when it comes to Shabbos, if I act with the wind, I'm chayiv, and over here, if I fan a flame, but then the wind helps me out, I'm going to be pater. So what's the difference between our case and Zorea on Shabbos? So Amar Rabaya, Amoraim give a number of answers. Amar Rabaya, Hakma Yaskinon, Yon Shaliba mitzat echad, V'lav Saharuach mitzat acher. An easy thing. I'm fanning this way. The fire goes that way. Clearly, I wasn't working with the wind. So how could I be blamed? Everything I tried to do, I didn't even accomplish, right? It was the wind that was overpowering my fanning. Rava Amar Kon Shaliba Baruch Mitsuya, V'lavsa Haruach Baruch Shein Mitsuya. You're right. I was trying to fan a flame, but had it just been a Ruach Mitsuya, it wouldn't have gone anywhere. What happened was all of a sudden there was like a hurricane wind and it blew the thing, and that's why all this damage occurred. I can't be held responsible for that. Rav Zeira Amar Kagon de Tzamra Smuri. He says, I didn't really fan the flame. I literally just like breathed on the fire. That was not going to cause anything. And then the wind comes. It was really all the wind and not me. And Rav Ashi Amar, the fourth answer is maybe the most fundamental, right? Which is basically there's a total difference between Malacha on Shabbos and Nezikin. So Rav Ashi Amar Kiyam Rinan Sorea Beruach Misiato Hadimi in Shabbos and Malachas Shabbos Asra Torah. Zora? Zora.
It is Zora.
Yes.
I always thought
Oh, very good. Very good. It didn't sound right. It didn't sound right. Very good. All right. Zora. Bottom line, there's a fundamental difference between the malacha of Zora on Shabbos, where I'm working within the wind. Shabbos requires a malachas machshavas. That was my intent. I'm using the wind to blow the chaff away from the good stuff that I want to keep. But when it comes, that's the Indian Shabbos when I need a malachas machshavas. When it comes to Nezikin, even if I'm working with the wind is still only a grama, and a grama b'nizakin is pater. So again, just a fundamental difference in the way Hilchah Shabbos works and the way Nezikin works. When it comes to Hilchah Shabbos, so long as my intent is to work with the wind, I can be chayiv on Shabbos. But when it comes to Nezikin, if the wind is a strong element in this story, then it could be a grama, and it's possible it can be pater, again, as we saw from earlier in this parak. If it's a grama, I'm probably pater b'dinei adam b'chayiv b'dinei shemaim, but at the very least, I'll be pater b'dinei adam. Okay, moving along in the malacha of H. Let's say I've got my fire, right? I'm burning my fire, whatever it is. But achla eitzim o avanim o afar chayiv, and it eats wood, it eats stone, it eats afar. I'm going to be chayiv. Shnamar, as the pasuk says, kisei H. Umatza kotzim v'nechal gadish, so it finds thorns, it finds grain, o akama, or standing grain, o hasada, or a field. Shalim yishalim hamaver esaveira. So the one who ignites the fire has to pay. And you'll notice the pasuk is very, very wordy, right? Gives a number of examples. V'achla, v'nechal, so matza kotzim, v'nechal gadish, o akama, o hasada. So all the Gemara is going to start with, why did I need all these examples? What's each of them teaching you? So Amar Rava, Lamali, the Kazav Rahman are kotzim and gadish and kama and sada. So again, kotzim are thorns, gadish is grain, kama is standing grain. I don't know the difference. And sada is the field. So the Gemara says, Shrifi, because Rahman are kotzim, if the Torah only said kotzim, hava mina kotzim hu dechai Rahman, mishum deshriach eish gabayu, ushriach the pasha. Aval gadish lo shriach eish gabayu, lo shriach the pasha emalon. Kotzim, apparently, they didn't like kotzim, and they would burn their kotzim. So it would make sense that you might have a fire near your kotzim, and therefore the Torah is saying you got to be careful. But when it comes to a gadish, I assume people did not want fire near a gadish, and they probably had enough reason to not have fire by the gadish. Maybe you think if it happens, someone goes some sort of onus or whatever it is, maybe you'd be pater, kamash malan, that no, you're chayiv either way. Because Rahmana gadish, and if I only had the gadish, have been a gadish chayiv Rahmana, we shouldn't have some meruba. You burn up your whole field. That's obviously a big hefsid. Aval kotzim to have some muad emalo. Maybe I don't even know what the havmin is, but maybe if kotzim, which aren't that valuable, you wouldn't be chayiv in the first place. So then come alamali. So once I have gadish and I have
You think people would want thorns, so therefore you have a favor by fire.
yeah, exactly. I don't maybe.
Well, evidently they're good for tinder.
Yeah, exactly. So now kama lamali, why do I need
What?
kama? So the Gemara says, ma kama begalui afkal begalui. What is the Torah teaching us by saying kama? Kama, the standing grain, I guess, is galui. So too, Aish only applies to what is galui and not tamun. This is one of the things that we've seen throughout the Masechta is that Aish, you're not chayiv for anything that's tamun be'Aish. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda, the mechayiv is tamun be'Aish kamalam. Rabbi Yehuda famously argues, and he says that you are chayiv on tamun be'Aish. I think this is actually going to be what we learn in tomorrow's daf, which I have not done yet. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, who says that you are chayiv by tamun, what does he do with kama? The Rabbos call bale kama. He includes things that like trees and animals. I guess there's a havamina that you wouldn't include those things in Aish. So therefore, he uses kama to teach me those things. For Rabbanan, the Rabbos call bale kama minaluhu. So now the Rabbanan who use kama to teach me the halacha of tamun be'Aish, that you're pater, how do they know that animals and trees you're chayiv for Aish? Nafkaluhu me o hakama. The word o is extra, and therefore that's what they use to teach me things that animals and trees and things like that. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda says, I don't think O is extra. If not for the word O in the pasuk, I would think that you're only chayiv for Aish if you burn each of these four things. But how do I know that you'd only be chayiv if I burn one of the four things? I need the word O lechalek. For Rabbanan lechalek minalu. So the Rabbanan who need O to teach me something else, how do they know lechalek? Nafkaluhu me O hasada. There's a second O in the pasuk. It says O hakama O hasada. So therefore, it's not actually what the pasuk says. But yeah, it does. Oh hakama, oh hasada. So they have a second O. So what does Rabbi Yehuda do with the second O? Rabbi Yehuda, I did because of Rahmana oh hakama, kasav oh hasada. And Rabbi Yehuda says it's just for symmetry. Once it says oh hakama, it also says oh hasada. Okay. So now, bottom line, sada lamali. So now, why do I need the fourth right example of sada? This is to include if you burn a plowed field or you burn stingy stones. These are things that an Aish, I guess, normally wouldn't do. There's a havamina that, again, like we've seen for some of the other mazik, and they're only going to be chayav for what's ordinary. And Aish is chayav even for things that are less ordinary. So the Gemara says it sounds like sada is almost like this catch-all to teach me that I'm always chayav. So so then just teach me sada, and I can work backwards. So the Gemara says, and essentially, I think what the Gemara is saying is if I only had sada, I would only think you're chayav for the things in the sada, the grain or whatever it is. How would I know that you're chayav for the ground or something like that? Therefore, I need the other things. But I think what the Gemara is saying more fundamentally is sometimes we know sada teaches me the big chiddush because of all the other things. If I didn't have all the other things, I wouldn't necessarily learn the biggest chiddush, and I would think that sada is teaching me a lesser chiddush. And thankfully, after yesterday's daf, which was a little bit more challenging, we have the rest of today's daf is really going to be a lot of agadatza. So, Amar of Shimon bar Nachmani, Amar of Yonasan. Aim per anus bala olam, el bizman shorashayim ba'olam. Per anus only comes to the world when we have bad people in the world. The eina mitchilas element at tzadikim tchila. But I guess once it comes, it starts with a tzadikim. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, he tates a eish umatza kotzim. Eimasai eish. When do we have fire? Eimasai eish yotza. Bisman shehakotzim mitzuyan lo. Eish is only going to be there when you have thorns, meaning the rishayim. The eina mitchelas element at tzadikim tchila. Yet once you have once you have the fire, it starts with the tzadikim. Shenemar v'nechal gadish. The pasuk says that the gadish was consumed. The achal gadish l'nemar doesn't say it will consume. It says ela v'nechal gadish shenechal gadish kfar. So again, you're only going to have per anos when you have rishayim. That's the kotzim. But then the pasuk says, "V'nechal gadish," as if to say the tzaddikim were already consumed. Okay. Tanya Rav Yosef, my dechsiv atem lo tetu ish mipesach beitzo ad boker. What do we see from the pasuk? This is by Makas Bechoros, where it said, "Don't leave your house until the morning." Kevish anitin reshus lamashlis. Once the mashlis has reshus to do damage, eino malchin bein tzadikim l'rashaim. It can't differentiate between the tzadikim and the rashaim. So everyone's got to stay indoors. Hello od elashamaskom and tzadikim tchila. Not only that, but it's going to start with the tzaddikim. So again, this is something you have to understand. How is it possible that the mashlos can't differentiate between the tzaddikim and the rashaim, yet it can go to the tzaddikim tchila? So I don't know. But one of the things that is interesting about this stuff, Shenamar, bottom line, there's a pasuk.
Make sure later.
I'm sorry.
We have to make sure later.
You have to make sure later. There's a pasuk.
We don't go out.
Oh yeah, very good. The pasuk says, the pasuk in Yechezkel, v'chreti mimech tzadik b'rasha. So that's how I know that it takes the tzaddikim first, because the pasuk refers to the tzaddikim first before the rasha. So Rav Yosef taught this teaching. We're at the bottom of Samech Amid Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. So Bachi Rav Yosef Kuli. So Rav Yosef was teaching this, and he started crying. He said, "Kuli Nami la'ayin domin," meaning the tzaddikim, they're going to be killed first, right? It was very sad. No, this is a tova that Hashem is doing for the tzaddikim. Rashi says, "Shlo yiru b'ra'ah hasida level." They get killed first, so they shouldn't see the destruction. Rav, turn page. When people are traveling, they're doing something, especially in those days that was viewed as very dangerous, you should always leave in sunlight, and you should try to enter wherever you're going with sunlight. The same pasuk by Bakas Bechoros. So that again, stay overnight, stay inside until the morning. Tana Rabbanan, Dever be'ir, if you've got a plague in the city, Kanes Raglacha, hunker down, stay indoors. Shenemar, same pasuk, right? Vatem lo teitzu ish mipesach beiso ad boker. The Omer, we have another pasuk Nach. This was in Yeshayahu. Lech ami bo b'chadarecha uskar d'lasecha ba'adecha. Same idea. There was some sort of plague, whatever it was. Stay indoors. The Omer, we have a third pasuk. Michutz the shakal cherev michadarim eim. This is, I think, in Kisavo, I think in the Klalos. So again, you want to stay indoors. So the Gemara often, right, whenever it has 3 psukim for a concept, it always says, "My Omer, why did I need 3 psukim for this?" The first one was dealing with the mashkos was at night. So you think maybe when it's at night, that's when you got to stay indoors. Aval be a mama. But if the cherev was going to be, the dever was going to be during the day, lo, so tashma, lechimi, baba chadarecha, skar de lasecha. That pasuk and nach, the thing that was happening was actually happening during the daytime. Maybe you think in the third one, in the Klalos, there was not only was there dever outdoors, there was even trouble inside your house. So maybe that when there's trouble inside my house, at the very least I should go out, be with the people. Maybe that'll be helpful. Tashma michutz shakal cherev mechadarim ema. Yeah, exactly. Maybe depending on when it was during the pandemic, but exactly. So even though there was, it was scary inside, still don't go outside, because I guess it was even worse over there. Rava be'idon rascha, when there was this, plague and stuff going on, Avi Sachar Kavi. He would seal up all of his windows. I guess there's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu that talks about, bad stuff outside, going through windows, whatever it is. So he made sure to seal up his windows. Tana Rabbanan, Ra'av be'ir, if you've got a hunger, Pazar Raglecha, you got to leave town and go somewhere else. Shenamar be'irav ba'aretz be'ir l'Avram Mitzrayma Lagur Sham. So there was a plague, and Avram had to leave and go down to Mitzrayim. Same idea. If there's a plague, not a plague, sorry, a hunger, you should go leave town. But Omer, again, another pasuk in Amarnu Navo Ha'ir, Arav be'ir u'masnu Sham. So this is a pasuk in Melachim, Beis, I believe. And there were these 4 Mitzrayim, and because they had Saras, they were outside of the Machana, of all the Machanas. And I guess it was a hunger. And they had this debate. What should they do? They're going to die where they are, but there was all sorts of trouble inside the town. and they didn't know what to do. And they said, "Hey, why should we die here? Let's at least take our chances inside the town." And that's again this limud of
And the surrounding.
yeah. So again, that's the point here: is when there's a hunger, leave where you are, and at least take your chances somewhere else. So the Gemara says, "My Omer, why do I need the second pasuk? Why isn't the pasuk with Avram enough? Maybe I think with Avram, at least he was leaving the hunger. He was going somewhere where maybe technically was safe. But if your choices are between where you are, which is a hunger, and somewhere which is not safe, maybe you should say where you are. Kamashma on the second pasuk, right? Tashma lechu v'naflu alamachana aram imichinu nichya. That's where they basically said, let's just take our chances. We're definitely going to die here. Let's at least go there and see what happens. Tanu Rabbanan, dever be'ir al yahalech adam be'emsa haderech. If there's a dever in the town, don't stay in the middle of the road. The malach hamavis is going to be in the middle of the drachim. Right. Once he's got permission to operate, he's got no fear. He's going to be right in the middle of the street. Shalom be'ir. Let's say there's shalom in the city. Al yahalech betzidei drachim. Now don't go on the side of the roads. He came into lesle rishosa machbe chavuye umatzi. Because the malach hamavis, if he doesn't have rishos, he's kind of hiding off to the side. So when times are good, walk right in the middle of the street. Avoid the malach hamavis. If it's times are bad, then you gotta be very careful.
The rubber seal was one they make windows, there's such thing glass in those days, so the glass was big, so Romans and empty glass in 180 right before.
100 AD. So Rava was a few hundred years later, probably. All right.
Extra 10 glass in it, potentially.
Tanu Rabbanan. Dever be'ir, we're in the top wide line, the middle of the wide, the not as wide. So Tanu Rabbanan. Dever be'ir, al yikanes adam yachid lebeis haKnesses, shemalach hamavis mafkid sham Caleb. There's a dever in the city. Don't go alone to a beis Knesses, because the malach hamavis hides keeps his kalim over there. But that's only where it's not being used as, I guess in those days that you would use beis Knesses is to teach kids. Or there isn't a minion. Obviously, there's a minion, then you don't have to be as concerned. Tanu Rabbanan, klavim bochim malach hamavis balir. If dogs are crying or whatever it is, that's a bad omen. And malach hamavis is coming. Klavim misachakim, if the dogs are happy, elio anavi balir. But I love this. Bahani mili, the last boon of cave. You got to read the fine print. That's only if there's no girl dog. Because if there is, then maybe they're just acting up. That's a little relatable, right? But assuming there's no girl, then if they're upset, it's because of the Malach HaMaves, and if they're happy, it's because of Eliyahu and Nav. Yasser Rav Ami, Rav Asi, Kamed Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. So Rav Ami and Rav Asi are by Rav Yitzchak Nafcha. Mar Amar Le Lema Mar Shmaitza. One of them said to Rav Yitzchak Nafcha, teach us something in learning, right? And Mar Amar Le Lema Mar Agadata, teach us an Agadata. So Pasach Lamemar Agadata. So we started talking in Agadata. V'lo Shavak Mar. The other one wouldn't let him go because he wanted to hear a Shmaita. Pasach Lamemar Shmaita. So they started talking and learning. V'lo Shavak Mar. And the other guy didn't let him because he wanted to hear a divrei agada. So Amar Lahem Emshel Lachem Mashal Lama Davar Doma. So Yitzchak Nafcha says to them, "Let me give you an analogy. A man's got two wives. One of them is younger. One of them is older. Yalda Melaketis Lo Lavanos. The younger one starts pulling out all of his white hairs because he wants him to look younger. Zakena Melaketis Lo Shchoros. The older one starts pulling out all of his black hairs, right? Because wants him to be Nimsa, correct, Mikan Mikan. The bottom line is, all of a sudden, the guy goes bald, right? Because you have one wife pulling these hairs, or one wife pulling those hairs. So what are we supposed to do over here? So Amar Lahen, I will say a limud that has a dvar agada, and it also has a dvar halacha. What's this thing? And this is why it's here. If a fire goes out, it's more of the passive, right? The fire goes out on its own. But then the pasuk says, "Shalem Yishalem Hamaver Saveira." Who should pay? The one who ignites the flame. So the pasuk kind of switches from more of a passive voice to more of an active voice.
So how is this a God?
We're about to get there. Very good, right? So Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu. So Hakadosh will speak it out outside first. What is the flame? Is our sins that cause the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, but yet Hashem kind of takes the initiative, and he kind of assumes responsibility, even though it wasn't his doing. And he's going to rebuild the Beis Hamikdash using fire. So Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Alai l'shalim es ha'be'era she'iv'arti, right? I'm going to like repay, I'm going to pay back for the flame that I guess I caused, whatever it is. I think the Art Scroll talked about maybe the flame is the Yetzer Hara that I guess Hashem created. So even though like maybe Hashem kind of created it, but then there was people's actions that caused the fire. I don't know, well above my pay grade. But the bottom line is, I need a Tzesi Eish B'Tzion. I kind of maybe the fire came Mitzion Shenemar V'Yatzes Eish B'Tzion Batocha Yisod Oseha. This is I think a pasuk in Eicha, I believe. Ba'ani Asid Liv Nosa Be'Eish. So I will go and I will rebuild using fire. Shenemar. I think it's pasuk in what is it? Zechariah. We'll go with Zechariah. It is Zechariah. Ba'ani Eya La Chomas Eish Saviv Ulakavod Eya Besocha. So that was the Dvar Agada. Now the Dvar Halacha, the Shmaita. Pasach HaKasav Beniske Mamono, the Siyam Beniske Gufa. The pasuk starts Beniske Mamono with kind of more of a passive. The fire goes out on its own. The Siyam Beniske Gufo, and then the pasuk concludes Beniske Gufo, right? Hamavers of Be'era, Lo Merlacha Isho Mishum Chitza. Kind of like how we paskin that Isho Mishum Chitza, which is like Rabbi Yochanan and not like Reish Lakish. So the last Gemara that we're going to do, how much time do we have? All right, we've got time. The last Gemara that we're going to do is a story that appears twice in Nach, once in Shmuel Beis, once in Divrei Hayamim. So you got to kind of give some of the background. So David HaMelech is hiding from Shaul, and the pasuk talks about in both spots he's got these Giborim with him, and they came, and the Pelishtim had one of the psukim in Shmuel talks about a pile of adashim, of lentils, and the other one talks about a pile of Seorim. And these Giborim came and they took, the grain or whatever it is, and then the pasuk tells. Again, this happens in both places. Pasuk tells a story where David HaMelech says to the folks near him, he says he really had a taiva for water. He had a certain thirst. He said, I need water from the shar in Beis Lechem. That's where he needed the water from. So they get him water from Beis Lechem, and he pours the water on the floor, and he says, how did you guys do this? You put your lives in danger to go get me this water, whatever it is. And he says, Tefillah to Hashem. And the story is obviously very strange. Like, they had plenty of water. Why did he need to go to Beis Lechem, to the shar of Beis Lechem? So the Gemara, just, so the Rishonim speak out. The Gemara clearly understands he didn't want water. He had a shaila, and there were chachamim in Beis Lechem, maybe even the Sanhedrin, which is the reference to the shar. So the Gemara is going to ask over here, what was the shaila that he needed from the Sanhedrin? So let's read it inside. The pasuk says, "Vayisave David Vayomar." David had a certain thirst or whatever it is. Mi ashkeni craving. Mi ashkeni mayim. Who's going to give me water? Mi bar Beis Lechem ashar b'shar. From the bar Beis Lechem, that's by the shar. V'yivku shloshes hagiborim. So these giborim came. V'machan et plishtim v'yishabu mayim mi bar Beis Lechem ashar b'shar. And then he spilled it on the ground and he said this whole thing. And again, it's important context that before the story, there is this discussion of these piles of grain, whether it was lentils or whether it was barley, by the plishtim. So the Gemara says, "My kamabayale." What is this question that David HaMelech had for the Sanhedrin? Amar Rava, Amar Nachman, Taman be'esh kamabayale. He had this exact shaila that the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda debated. Right? They must have had a situation wherever David HaMelech was that someone burned his friend's stuff that was hidden in a haystack. And is he chayav or is he pater? Ikra Yehuda, Ikra Rabbanan, upashula my depashula. And what was the answer? Well, Rabbi Yehuda will say it was like me, and the Rabbanan will say it was like them. Rav Huna Amar. Gedishin the Seorim di Yisrael havu. He said, no. There was a pile of barley that belonged to the Jews. The havu matmare Pelishtim behu, and the Pelishtim were kind of hiding in this grain. Become a bayale ma'ul hatzal atzam and chavero. And what he wanted to do was he wanted to set flame to these piles of grain so that Pelishtim was forced to run out, and then he can smoke out these Pelishtim. And the question was, can I burn a Jewish, the mammon of the Jews to help us in the war effort? And Shalchule, and the answer that they got back was, no, you cannot do this. But, meaning a person cannot do this. Aval ata melech ata, you are the melech. Umelech poret lasos lo derech, you're allowed to do whatever you want. So even though the answer is no, you are vein mochem biado. You would be given a special dispensation. You'd be able to do this. For Abanam ve'es marabba bar Mari Amru gedishem disorin di Yisrael have. The question was that the Jews had piles of barley. Ukedishin da adashin de plishtim, and the plishtim had piles of lentils. Become a bayaluhu ma'u lito gedishin shal sheorin the Israel litain lefnei behemto al menas l'shalem gedishin shal adashin de plishtim. The question was, can we use the barley that belongs to the Jews to feed our animals? with the understanding that we'll defeat the Plishtim, we'll steal their lentils, and then we'll use their lentils to repay the Jews. So can I basically use the Jewish money today with the understanding that we will plunder the Plishtim and then use that to repay the Jews? And the answer was, this was a pasuk from Yechezkel that obviously didn't happen yet, so the Gemara is kind of using it. But it's saying, even if you repay your gezela, you're still a rasha. So therefore, the answer is no. But again, the same concept. You're a king, so you can do whatever you want. Okay.
It's a man.
Something like that, exactly.
They call it your property builder, they want you.
Exactly. So the Gemara says, Bishlam according to the answer, this kind of the third answer that said we want to use the Jewish barley to repay with the lentils. That's why in one of the two places it talks about barley, the other one talks about lentils, because each one had a role in the story. But according to the second answer that said he just wanted to essentially burn these stacks. So my ibailu lahani trey cry. Like, why does the story shift from barley to lentils? Right? So Amar Lacha, the Havunami, Gedishim, the Adashim, the Yisrael, the Havumatri Plishtim. They're just telling you that there were piles of lentils and there were piles of barley. For some reason, one of the stories focused on this, one of them focused on that, but they had both. Bless you. Bishlam, according to the Mandamar, who said that they wanted to burn the stacks of grain to smoke out these Plishtim. When David HaMelech ultimately decided, when he poured out the water, that's a euphemism or a reference to him not going ahead and doing whatever he was thinking of doing. It makes sense when he was going to burn the stuff. So the Torah says that he kind of saved the stuff, right? Meaning he didn't go ahead and burn it. But if all he was talking about was maybe using the Jewish grain and then repaying them, so my the word doesn't really make sense. So the word says no, because he didn't use the Jewish grain to feed his animals. Bishlam, according to both of these explanations, whether it was burning the Plishtim stuff or using the Jewish stuff and then stealing the Plishtim stuff, that's why I guess you have apparently ArtScroll says that, and Rashi you could see also it's a little unclear what this answer is, but I guess it would make more sense to the Gemara that if that was the question, the wordiness of these stories make a lot more sense. The entire question was a halachic shaila of Taman Be'esh. So then, like, Ma'i Ba'ilei Cry, like, what do you need all these psukim for? So Amar Lach, Tamun, B'chad Mehanach Tama Ba'ilu. You're right. Clearly, even if the question was Taman Be'esh, he also had one of these other shailas. And that explains kind of the lengthiness of the stories in both of these places. Bishlam Alamand Amar Hani Tarti, Bishlam according to the Mandamar, who says either the question was, can I burn the grain of the Plishtim, or can I use the grain of the Jews and then later on steal the grain of the Plishtim to pay them back? We can understand why David didn't want to take that advice, and it was a bidiyah, and therefore he didn't want to do it. Right? Amar Kevan Ika Isura Lo Nichali Ela Lamanda or Tamam Be'esh Kamabayla. If the entire Shiloh was just a halachic Shiloh, how do we pass him by Tamam Be'esh? So Michti Gemaru Deshalchule. He just asked him a Shiloh. My lo avadava l'shtosam. Right? What does it mean? He didn't want to drink from this. Like, what was his problem exactly? Like Gemara says, Lo Amarinhu Mishmayu. He didn't want to say over this halacha in the names of the Giborim that risked their lives to get him this answer. Amar Kachma Kublane Beisdino Shmuel Haramati. I have a Masora from the Beis Din of Shmuel Haramasi. Kolamos for Atzmo Lamavis al Devrei Torah Ein Omrim Dvar Halacha Mishmo. He was not happy that they risked their lives to go ask he never asked them to go and into Beis Lechem, and they did it on their own. He said, he has this question, let's help him out. So David Melech was a little upset about it. He was like, you should not have risked your life to get us this answer. So then I guess he praised Hashem, or this was sort of tefillah. Again, that's a way of saying he worked within Shem Shemaim. He didn't want to do a b'diavad l'shem Shemaim. What does it mean? What is this tefillah? So I guess he said he was going to say over this halacha mishma, like it's unnamed, but in the name of the Masorah, he didn't want to name these Giborim. So it was kind of, it was a bit of a straddle. On the one hand, he felt it was important to publicize the Psak Halacha. He didn't want to say it in their name because they risked their lives inappropriately. And we will pick this up tomorrow. I actually have